Drew McIntyre is having one of the best heel runs we've seen in a while. Sharing the spotlight with someone like CM Punk isn't easy, but he's made it work. His contract was expiring and he became a run-of-the-mill babyface, leaving him no option but to transform into a bitter arsehole. In this video, we're going to take a look at Drew McIntyre's journey to becoming one of the best heels in wrestling. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. McIntyre won the 2020 Royal Rumble and then beat Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania during the pandemic to become the WWE champion. He reached the mountaintop, but nobody was there to celebrate with him. It was the biggest moment of his career, but he couldn't help but feel like a failure. He had the chance to win big once again at Clash at the Castle. The entire show was centered around him, and after hearing Broken Dreams, it felt like he was going over. But Solo Sikoa stopped him in his tracks. This was all the fuel he needed to change. After taking time to process his biggest failures, Seth Rollins accepted a challenge for a World Heavyweight title match at Crown Jewel. During the segment, Damian Priest attacked him from behind, with Dominic rushing to the ring with the briefcase. Whilst Rollins was getting his arse beat, he wasn't interested in getting involved, but after dealing with the bloodline, he was done with outside interference. He took out Dom and ruined Priest's opportunity to cash in. He was a babyface and didn't make the save, and instead went into business for himself when the briefcase was brought into the equation. This was the beginning of his downward spiral. After his attack, Rollins had a lot of things he wanted to get off his chest. He sympathized with McIntyre, explaining how he grabbed the brass ring and earned opportunities, but he needed to get over his obsession with the bloodline. As the weeks rolled on, Drew went with a new slogan: "No more broken dreams." A video package explained his journey to the mountaintop. He came in as the chosen one and eventually got fired. This allowed him to reinvent himself in the indies, which caught the eyes of the WWE, who re-signed him. After working his arse off, there was no big payoff because the biggest moment in his career happened with nobody in attendance, and then after getting himself back into the title picture, the bloodline snatches his opportunity away from him. In his eyes, Crown Jewel was his own version of finishing the story. At the event, he couldn't produce the goods, but he wasn't finished. He teamed with the Judgment Day at Survivor Series War Games, but came up short, and things got worse when CM Punk returned. After the show went off the air, he was disinterested and made his way to the back. This planted the seeds for what was to come. After taking constant L's, he became his own worst enemy, blaming himself and the bloodline for his failure. He had way too many skeletons in the closet, and when Jey Uso got drafted to Raw, it got worse. He took out his frustration on him, and Drew simply couldn't trust him. Things got worse after Rollins announced he was defending the title against Jey. McIntyre lost his mind and headbutted Rollins. He felt Rollins had something against him and made these decisions to piss him off. Sami gave him an earache and then tried to light a fire under his arse, explaining he wasn't the only one who got screwed over by the bloodline in front of his family. This led to them having a match and McIntyre coming out on top, but he wasn't done, and as Sami Zayn recovered backstage, he got his arse beat, with McIntyre reminding him they were nothing alike. His rampage continued as he knocked Jey's head off with a claymore during his World Heavyweight title match and sent him through the announce table. He was out for blood against anyone who had wronged him in the past. He thought he settled the score the following week on Raw after beating Jey, and decided to set his sights on 2024, where he promised to finish his story and become the World Heavyweight champion. After attacking Rollins the following week, he had another title opportunity, but interference from the Judgment Day and battling his own demons was his biggest downfall, and he couldn't beat Rollins. He found his face meeting the announce table with a pedigree and then a stomp in the middle of the ring to be delivered another loss. It seemed like he handed out an empty promise, and there was no chance for him to win the World Heavyweight title at WrestleMania because that spot was reserved for CM Punk. During the Royal Rumble, he hit Punk with a Future Shock DDT and injured his tricep in the process. Despite this, he was eliminated by Punk, crushing his hopes at headlining WrestleMania. This was everything he needed to transform his character into one of the most despicable human beings we've ever seen. The Raw after the Rumble saw him beat the holy hell out of CM Punk, targeting his injured tricep. This started a new obsession for him, with CM Punk being clowned for weeks. He walked around with shirts mocking mocking him for his failed WrestleMania main event and became the biggest keyboard warrior known to man, taking a shot at him every chance he got. It was the perfect way to get heat and involved his character massively. This was ultimately the catalyst for him being pushed into Punk's spot at Mania. After sidelining him with injury, the opportunity to headline WrestleMania was up for grabs. After taking constant L's, he felt injuring CM Punk was a massive win, and it gave him the kick up the arse to start handling business. Making his way into the Elimination Chamber, he beat AJ Styles and Cody Rhodes, two of WWE's MVPs. It was a massive boost to his morale, and he won the Elimination Chamber match to secure his spot at WrestleMania against Seth Rollins. But things were different this time. Rollins was preoccupied with the bloodline, which in all honesty took away the spotlight. He urged Rollins for weeks to forget about them and focus on his title defense. But Seth saw a dangling carrot and couldn't pass up the opportunity. McIntyre's big WrestleMania main event wasn't the fairy tale story he told himself. With Rollins keeping him on the back burner, he continued his pursuit, keeping the storyline alive. Seth damaged his ego even more by telling him he was the least of his worries as he headed into WrestleMania. The story kept repeating itself, with Drew constantly reminding him to get his ducks in a row. It needed something to take it to the next level, and CM Punk was brought into the equation. As we headed into Mania, Raw was passing by Chicago, and CM Punk had to make an appearance. He appointed himself a special guest announcer, but we knew shenanigans were on their way. The match had all the hype it needed after Punk inserted himself into the mix, and McIntyre evolving into one of the best heels in the company. During the match, it was obvious Seth wasn't at 100%, and after working his arse off defending the heavyweight title, the result was inevitable. He wasn't as sharp and took a beating, with McIntyre taking time to post on social media and mock Punk at commentary. He beat Rollins clean and was acknowledged after the match. The dream came true. He won the World Heavyweight title at WrestleMania with fans in attendance, but he wasn't gracious at all. This was the perfect opportunity to mock CM Punk, and he made his way over to the announce position and got in his face, taking the royal piss out of him. This was his biggest mistake, because his arse met the announce table and he was battered at ringside by an injured Punk, who ultimately cost him the World Heavyweight title after holding it for just under a measly 6 minutes. Normally, this would make you look like a clown. It worked perfectly for Drew, who built up this gimmick over the last few months. He reached the mountaintop and interference always cost him. He couldn't tame the beast, inflating his ego at every win that came his way. He ruined it for himself, and his obsession with CM Punk is now at an all-time high. Everyone knows Punk isn't going to take shit, and when he comes back, he's coming for McIntyre. After WrestleMania, it was well known McIntyre's deal was expiring with the company, but his stock had risen massively. They simply couldn't lose him with one of the biggest feuds in wrestling on the horizon. Thankfully, WWE gave him what he wanted, and he agreed to an extension until 2027. The future looks bright for him with CM Punk on the horizon and the announcement of Clash at the Castle in Glasgow. In all honesty, I don't mind Damian Priest winning the World Heavyweight title. It was something he had to do. CM Punk inserting himself into the equation at WrestleMania was the sole reason he has the belt around his waist. If he didn't successfully cash it in, it would have damaged him massively, and the Judgment Day would lose all credibility after being built for a number of years. But all good things must come to an end, and I think McIntyre is taking the title back at Clash at the Castle. I really hope it happens, because I'm going to both nights in Glasgow, and I can't help but think it could have worked out differently. Imagine if it wasn't announced that he'd re-signed with the company, and his obsession with CM Punk had become so bad that he decided to replicate one of his biggest moments in his career. Imagine this: Drew's deal is expiring with the company, and Clash at the Castle is in his home country of Scotland. He wins the title and blows the WWE a kiss goodbye, walking out with the World Heavyweight title. Everyone knows a CM Punk feud is locked in, and this would be the perfect way to build that story even further, but it just isn't going to turn out that way. There's enough meat on the bones anyway, and after revealing Punk fractured fractured his elbow after planting his ass on the announce table, it ironically makes the feud that much better. They both prayed for each other's injuries and they happened. The wheels are in motion for a massive SummerSlam match. As Drew McIntyre and CM Punk's feud kicks off, it's obvious why McIntyre is the perfect heel. The story is intense, mixing real beef with clever storytelling. Watching McIntyre turn into what he hates most about Punk, a hypocrite, bitter and stirring up controversy, just adds layers, making it so much better. This evolution shows McIntyre as both the bad guy and somehow still the underdog, grabbing our attention and building up his heel gimmick. Every promo is charged with real heat, making it impossible to look away. As McIntyre dives deeper into those traits he used against Punk, he's not just proving he's a top tier heel, he's making sure we're all tuning in to see his next move. There's no doubt he's one of the best heels in WWE today, and I can't wait to see how 2024 turns out for him. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then make sure you subscribe, and make sure you let me know your thoughts on McIntyre's heel gimmick. There's plenty more coming your way. Stay tuned for more wrestling content right here on Wrestling Real.